So now it's time to welcome the opening panel of the FTTH conference. The objective is to invite senior representatives of leading European operators to share their view on key topics relevant and important for our industry in 2023. Our speakers come from 5 larger markets in Western Europe. They represent operators with a diversity of business model and history. And I would like to introduce you to Enrique Blanco, CTIO and board member at Telefonica Group. David Elfassy, president at Altitude Infra in France. Mario Rossetti, CEO at Fibre in Italy. Dana Tobak, founder and CEO at Hyperoptic in the UK. And last but not least, Andreas Pfisterer, CEO at Deutsche Glasfaser. Thank you very much for being on the panel today. As we typically do in this panel, we start with introduction statement from each of our panelists before opening up to Q&A. So if I can ask Enrique to deliver his opening statement. Are you using the lectern?
I will.
So you'll have the clicker on the lectern.
Okay. So, first of all, welcome to Madrid. So this is a very special year because in February, we enjoyed with Barcelona in the mobile World Congress technology, and today we are in Madrid with a fix or the FTTH technology. It's a very good year for us, for Spain. 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, in 28, so FTTH, and I was listening to Mr. Hines. So Fibre, he was a matter of conviction, decision, and we took the decision. We were absolutely convinced that we have the right technology, we have the right approach, and Fibre is a solution. I was in Alcatel in 1986 working and analyzing Fibre, it is the must. So we in Telefonica understand that Fibre, FTTH plus 5G, it is the only way trying to serve the societies when we are operating. And in 28, we took the decision trying to deploy massively FTTH. And by the end of this, and with our companies that have been working with us as partners, they are extremely relevant in this, we were building an industrialized process because it is a matter of decision. And we took the decision because we have crystal clear approach. And because of this, when we today are extremely proud, looking at our colleagues and competitors that they are just pushing an acceleration because today it is not a matter of decision. Fibre today, it is a must. And this is a matter of acceleration. In Telefonica, in Spain, we are extremely proud. We will be switching off a copper next year. This is not a commitment, this is not a dream, this is a fact. We will be switching off all our customers of copper next year. This means that Telefonica will be switching off all the copper customers, and we will be just only using FTTH. And this is, from our point of view, one of the best ways to serve the societies when we are operating. Because today, for Telefonica, it is not a matter of decision, it is a matter of acceleration. So we have been, first of all, doing a big effort trying to cover all the dense areas, but we are just using all the levers that we have. So acceleration of FTTH, it is a must. And this is because we have Bluevia in Spain, Fibre in Brazil, as a Fibre Coast alliance with Alliance in UGG in Germany, and with Nexfibre that we are working trying to build a massive FTTH coverage in all the countries when we are operating. We have been doing very similar thing in Peru, in Chile, in Argentina, and so on. This is a matter of acceleration. We only can serve with all the connectivity capabilities if we are just doing a massive and industrialized FTTH deployment. What we are today, if we analyze ultra broadband, but just going strictly to the Fibre, we have built by ourselves up to 64.5 million of home passed in FTTH. We are just evolving all the capabilities. When you see in all the different providers what it is happening with the Fibre, 10 gigas today it is something usual, regular. Wi-Fi 6, it is the standard that we can offer our customer. But this is not only about connectivity, so we have all the capabilities to go to 10 and 50, so it is about the architecture. It is the time of the disaggregation. We are pushing very hard trying to build open architecture and disaggregated capabilities. And don't forget that when we are discussing, and I go back to Mr. Hines, so about technology, customers do not understand about technology. Fiber, copper, coaxial, Ethernet, doesn't care. It is Wi-Fi. How you can offer your customer the Wi-Fi possibilities, and you only can be offering these capabilities if you are putting together the FTTH capabilities plus the Wi-Fi, plus the customer premises equipment with extremely high quality. And the fantastic combination of FTTH plus a subset of CPE's customer premises equipment, offering to the customer the Wi-Fi experience at home and room by room, that is when we are going, it is the right formula, trying to guarantee that you are offering your customer the connectivity that they need. But it is about sustainability. Let me give some number. I compare copper with fiber. Fiber, it is an 85% much more green way of doing. We are reducing the emissions, power consumptions, and so on. This is not only that we are offering to the customer and to the society the right technology, we are offering a technology which is extremely sustainable in terms of power consumption, emission, and so on. And this is something that we cannot forget. But this is just only about communication and connectivity. But FTTH plus CPEs, it is helping us trying to offer our customers services. It is not only about connectivity. In Wi-Fi, it is connectivity. It is about services. And when I say that it's about services, we are building a new paradigm of services over an extraordinary good connectivity. All the people it is in Barcelona, so listening about the open gateway capabilities, about the camera approach, we are ready to offer our customers services over FTTH, who it is the 80% of the total traffic of my customers. We can offer services with quality on demand, quality guaranteed. And we are building a home as a computer and a control of this connectivity offering services that will be included within the GSMA approaching camera, and will be helping us trying to offer our customer an extraordinary connectivity, and he's asking and he's demanding this, we can be offering this new paradigm of camera services and open gateway capabilities. It is not only connectivity. It is not only Wi-Fi. It is about services, and this is what we are building. And this is what Telefonica is trying to do. So we have a formula which, for all of us now, it is crystal clear. You only can serve if you are reaching FTTH massively, and you are combining with the 5G capabilities. This is the right formula, and we need to find how the services and the monetization will be helping us trying to go to the right velocity. This is not a matter of decision. Today, it is not a decision. Today, it is acceleration. In Telefonica, it is building this in all the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we are moving northwards a little bit and reach the French market. I will ask David Elfassy to deliver his opening statement about the view of altitude infra on the French market and beyond.
Hello, everybody. Like all of you, we like optical fiber, and only optical fiber. So let me introduce Altitude Infra. It's a French telecom group, leading by Altitude Group and my boss, and the group is leading by a woman, Dorothée Lebarbier. She's the daughter of the founder, Jean-Paul Rivière. And one of specificity of our group is to stay like a family-owned group, family office, and we want to keep the majority stake in the society. It's a very important point for us. We are whole pioneer, I think, in our own country. We have large growth since our creation, and we are a major telecom group, and we're established on ourselves It's really important, and now we are the third large infrastructure telecom operator on B2C and B2B market in France, just after Orange and SFR. We have 5 large brands. Today we'll talk about Altitude Infra, which is wholesaler in France, focus on B2C parts, so I will give you more details after that. Another part really large is Covage. We bought Covage almost 2 years ago, and it's also a company who is on the wholesale market, specifically on the B2B part. So Altitude Infra and Covage represent a large wholesaler in France, and we don't serve the final user. We also have another company, AirMob, fixed on mobile services, and I will come back later on it, but I think we have a lot of things to do in France by using FTTH, but also 5G and IoT, etc. So we bought AirMob for that. Link is a retailer focused on B2B market in France with the large accounts, and also the last one, Fibre, just do a tailor-made solution for large accounts in France. How the group is representing here. So we have to connect 2.5 million French people made eligible for fiber optical in France. It represents 5 million home passed, and we had already deployed more than 3.5. 150,000 companies are already connected on Covage network in France. It's a really important market. And I didn't say, but on Altitude market, we also have more than 40% of penetration. All the retail operators are our customers in France, all the B2B retailer, but also the 4 major ISPs, Orange, Free, Bouygues, and SFR in France. And we already deployed more than 150 million kilometers of optical fiber. It's our revenue, etc. But I think the important thing, I finish and focus on Altitude Infra because it's the subject today. We work in the PIN area in France. I will explain you later the specification of the French model. But as a wholesaler, we deployed 5 million home passed. Like I said, we already deployed 3.5 million home passed in France, and it continues really fast. For example, we deployed more than 1 million home passed last year. And we had already connected through the 4 major ISPs 1.4 million home passed. It represents an investment of 5 billion euros, and it's already globally financed. That's all, and we represent 8% employees with 30% of women. I think it's a good thing for as a price next year. That's all.
Thank you very much, David. May I ask Mario to take the floor?
Good morning, everyone, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be here today to speak about a couple of main issues that we want to share with you, that I want to share with you. I'm gonna talk about the Italian market, having a look also to the European environment about how the digitalization process is progressing all around Europe. And I'd like to share with you some thoughts about what we can do to achieve at a faster rate this kind of process. Let me spend a few words about open fiber, because we all are passionate about fiber in this room, for sure. But open fiber, as you may see, starting from 2017, 2018, when we started our project, has done a lot. Today, open fiber is a 13 million households coverage, of which we have in the big cities, Italian big cities, around 9 million. Over 4.5 million coverages in the white areas, the rural areas, and actually we should have a look at this project because it's the largest in Europe. We have already invested 6 billion euro, and we have a customer base of around 2.3 That means 65% of penetration in the retail market. Everything is good. Let's say that when we started our operation, Italy was lagging behind. We had a coverage that was around 20% in 2018. Today, let me say in 2021, because the official data are still moving, let's say that we have doubled with the entrance of Open Fibre this coverage. And actually, my understanding is that from the data that will be released tonight on the 22, this percentage of coverage will be over 50%. But let's see. The real point is that the take-up is not good enough. And I show you what is the Italian market in general terms. Italy is made of 20 million landlines. And as you may see, the numbers are pretty clear. We have still 4.5 million on copper. We're talking about voice and DSL. We have more than 10 million lines still on FTTC, 1.75 in FWA, and only 3.5 FTTH. That means a penetration 20% at national level. Why? Because this is the question we face every single day, we discuss internally. Let me stress only two major arguments. First, the mobile data price in Italy is one of the lowest in the world. Actually, it's the second lowest in the world because the first one is Israel. So it's very easy to utilize a mobile SIM to substitute a landline, especially, you know, summer houses, this kind of utilization. So this is one first clear concept. Second, there is not clear distinction between FTTH and FTTC in terms of education of the customer, for sure, but also in terms of pricing. So we are a wholesale business. Sorry, I forgot to mention the most relevant point. So our customers are the telcos. So they don't have any financial interest in moving, migrate their customer base from FTTC to FTTH because there is not additional profitability. They incur only in some costs because the migration cost. So this is, and actually in Italy we don't have any cable television. This is important also to understand why the coverage of the FTTH is important. Our government, in line with the guidelines of the European Commission, is still focusing the intervention, the public intervention in terms of building additional infrastructure, and actually they bring forward the 2030 objective of the gigabit society to 2026. So at the end, Italy is usually investing in this kind of developing infrastructure. But what I was saying, this is not enough, because if you go to have a look to Europe, as we were hearing before, Spain is by far the country that has done more in this respect. Italy and Germany, between the, let me say, the large countries, are the one lagging behind. And this is, a major problem in terms of competitive advantage of the economies, because to have a very advanced digital infrastructure means a great advantage for the business, for the family, for the entire society. On the other point, there is another point that should be mentioned, and again, I refer also what our colleague from Telefonica was saying. An FTTH network is by far more efficient in terms of energy saving, more than 80%. So an FTTH infrastructure is green by far more than the existing infrastructure. So I go to the point, what would be Open Fibre suggestion, and what we want to ask you to evaluate, to debate together. We feel like we need that the Commission will make a step forward in terms of evaluating a copper switch-off. Rules, guidelines, because as we have seen in the draft recommendation that were issued on February this year by the Commission, there is a specific session related to the copper switch-off, but now it's time not only to be, let me say, theoretical, but to move to action, to do things, setting some possible data at European level, because this is after this will be, declined at national level because everyone has different situation. But for sure, we feel like if Europe wants to hit the target of 2030 to have the gigabit society, it's not only about building infrastructure, but it's the adoption, it's the utilization of this infrastructure. So the suggestion is to have Europe as the first copper-free continent, as an idea, and to have so Europe again back in the, let me say, as a leader in digitalization and the green transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. Now I'll hand over to Dana. I mean, UK has been growing at very fast speed, so maybe you'll tell us a little bit about this very dynamic market.
I will indeed, and it's so appropriate to actually have this panel after the awards, and I want to give a special thanks to the FTTH Council, because I still recall when we started the business, and now it's 11 years ago, I remember very busily going to the FTTH Council website and downloading, I'm not even sure if it was version 1 at that time, of the FTTH handbook, and trying to learn as much as possible. We are definitely a different sort of company. Effectively, let's see, there we go. Effectively, we did start in 2011, and our heritage is both within the UK and actually my co-founder had a company in Sweden back in the early 2000s, which was one of the pioneers of fiber. And then from 2004 to 2006, we built a local loop unbundled network in the UK, which actually ended up being bought by O2 and becoming part of the Telefonica network prior to that being sold off to Sky. But we always knew fiber was coming, and in fact, in 2006, when we were signing all the paperwork, effectively, my co-founder and business partner looked across the table and said, "So when are we starting that fiber company?" Now, I was required to stay with O2 for a bit longer to help with the transition, etc., but actually, we started working on the fiber business plan in 2010. And just kind of thinking back to that time in the UK, and I'm really, it's brilliant that Openreach has done as much as it has since, but back in 2010, 2011, the average speed in the UK was 6 megs a second. So when we started talking about 1 gig, it was really different. It was really evolutionary. And for us, we were, not to quote from Hamilton, but I will, we were young, scrappy, and hungry. And effectively, it was about how could we build fiber in the UK in a very smart way as literally, co-founders starting in a single room. And it became about financial discipline and absolutely about the customer. And those are the two absolute fundamentals of our DNA, which have led us to where we are today and our place within the UK market. So the UK market is led absolutely by Openreach, Virgin, along with its recent combination with O2, also looking to make some headway. And then we have a large wholesaler with CityFibre, who I know is speaking in many of the sessions over the course of these 2 days. The difference with Hyperoptic is we are vertically integrated, and not to disrespect the open access model, but because of the way the UK model works, where 80% of all customers use one of 4 networks, means that the only way an open access network works is if you get one of those 4 networks. And given that Virgin has not had any propensity to wholesale off of anyone else, you're left with BT, who is also in the same category, and then you have Sky and TalkTalk as the main contributors. So to build a successful wholesale model really requires having a very different cost and return perspective. And for us, it's always been about that financial discipline. So we started with fiber to the building in London and absolutely proved our 20-page business model before we took external investment into the company, which happened in 2013. So I only have 2 slides. But just to give you a sense of how far we've come and how that impact is different from what's happening across the industry in the UK. So we are the largest vertically integrated altnet. And you can see from some of these numbers, we have a smaller homes passed footprint than many of the others at the table, but the key for us is because we're very explicit about where we choose to invest. So our goal is not about how do we maximize homes passed, our goal is about how do we maximize customers and return. And what we see is within a year of going live, we get about 40% penetration, and we do that by focusing on the customer, and we have that freedom because it's our own network. We're also one of the few altnets in the UK that actually has revenue, including positive EBITDA, which is in this current environment a very important metric when we go to our shareholder and our lenders and debtors. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of who we are as a company. And with that, we had one more slide, but I think it got cut, not a problem. It was just really a proud moment of showing you our take-up rate curves, which is really that our early cohorts are already at 55% take-up. So looking forward to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And maybe shall I invite Andreas? Be careful, Andreas, your equipment is falling apart.
Well, I tried to top it because I don't have any slide. Let me start off with a bit of broader perspective. 90% of all data, digital data in the world, has been produced in the last couple of years. And that trend is going to last in the foreseeable future. So it basically also tells you how important leading edge digital infrastructure like FTTH is actually, not only as a necessity, but also as a key enabler for social and economic development of any country producing and dealing with such amount of data being transmitted throughout the networks and enabling also. And by the way, it's also a key enabler for greenification of society, not only with the better deployment of FTTH vis-a-vis legacy, but also the all enablement of use cases, which hopefully should also help us from that perspective. We at Deutsche Glasfaser, we are particularly proud about the fact that we've been pioneering of deploying FTTH in Germany for almost now 10 years and a bit more. And we are predominantly focusing on the rural and suburban part, which used to be underdeveloped and where there's still big potential in the market. That said, today, and we've seen it maybe on some of the slides from Mario, there's just about 25% FTTH coverage in Germany. And there's still huge potential of deploying more fiber. So why is that the case that we only have 25%? And there's three main reasons for that one. The first reason is the market structure. And sorry to say, a pretty sleepy incumbent for the last couple of years. You only woke up very recently to actually start deploying fiber infrastructure. The market structure basically on the retail side has an oligopoly of 4 players, Telefónica, 1&1, Vodafone, and Deutsche Telekom. Basically made it very cozy in terms of having a lot of wholesale deals on legacy infrastructure, hence not really allowing, let's say, alternative play on the infrastructure side. At the same point in time on the infra side, we do actually have 30 sizable players, but in total almost 200 players having deployed or deploying fiber at smaller scale and different sizes. And obviously we take particular pride that we are the biggest market leader in rural space and the second biggest in the overall market in Germany. The second key issue why we only have such a few, let's say, fiber deployments so far these days is it's actually quite costly in Germany because 100% of the fiber has or is being put underground. There's very limited ducted access. It's expensive soil classes and surface types. So in essence, it's basically something which makes it very expensive to deploy fiber in that kind of space. And the last hurdle for us in Germany in particular is bureaucratic hurdles. Sometimes we even need to go through 10 municipality authorities in order to get the ground running and deploy fiber in our space. And the structure in Germany of 16 federal states, more than 11,000 municipalities, with a lot of independence between those ones, really hasn't made it easy for us for simplification as well as automation and digitalization of the whole process of deploying fiber and applying for fiber deployment in Germany. So there's a lot of things which need to be improved. One thing is about the regulatory part, the policy piece. Second thing is, and that's why I'm super happy also for the award from the FTTH Council today, together on working on more efficient deployment mechanisms, especially in the country with such low fiber deployment in Germany. I mean, we're making 30% of the gap for the EU to reach 100% by 2030 in terms of fiber coverage. And obviously also what's very important is to make sure that we are working on continuous simplification of the whole process of standardization of deploying fiber in the industry. Still in Germany, the fiber deployment has accelerated over the last couple of years, and we've seen 50 billion of euros being put aside from private sector investors and another 22 billion only by today by subsidies coming from the government side. So it's not about that money has been missing, but it's basically having that kind of engine running to deploy fiber. We are well positioned as Deutsche Glasfaser because we've been around for some time. We've got the scale experience, we have the capital, we've got the capacity, and we also have the capabilities to deploy that for the future and to make a significant impact, not only for the social, but also for the economical development in Germany. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to have a conversation, and I would like to start with a very general question to set the scene. When I prepared this conference 6 months back, I mean, I got the feeling that everyone was bracing for recession and for a very, very tough 2023. So maybe my very first open question is situation has improved, but there's still quite a few macroeconomic challenges. So question on, how do you navigate within that environment, and what are your take about the current circumstances in terms of how is it to invest, how is it to convince people to buy and subscribe to your network? Maybe starting with you, Enrique.
So we try to navigate with care, with a lot of care. So, and the countries are quite different. So if you are analyzing European countries, you know that we are operating in with the JV, with the Liberty in Virgin Media O2 in UK, and the rest of Europe, Germany, Spain, so the main issue that we see it is, first of all, it is true that the energy, it is not the issue that we think at a certain point that it's going to be. So it is not making us a problem. So Germany is a country who it is supporting very well the crisis, so our perception. So in Spain, so we have an extraordinary hard regulation, and we need to work in. But if you see our first quarter, so it is going pretty good. So we are navigating with care, but we are getting successful. So in my personal opinion, it is that we cannot compare Europe with, for instance, Latin America. Brazil, it is a rocket. It is great. It is going very well. But my point is that it's going to be a very tough year, but we will be making a very good numbers. This is my personal opinion.
David, would you concur? How do you see 23?
Yeah, we're quite optimist. By the way of, first, the subscriber demand. We have a good demand today because the copper of France is not so good. So you can have optical fiber for the same price than the DSL in France, and when the country is almost finished to be covered. Yes, it's like efficient to have optical fiber in France today. Base of order remains at high level. Just for altitude, we are not a so big operator. We have more than 100,000 new subscribers each month, so it's really good for us. We know the end of the copper in France, so the decommissioning push the optical market in France. And we also have more than 50% of penetration in France on FTTH deployed, so it's really good. By the way of the lenders, it's a little bit different. We can observe a small effect on banks' margin, but it's more balanced by the current step of network building that makes disappears cost risk of building because we are at the end of the construction. And the main subject is coverage due to the Euribor increase in France. But our side, we are quite confident because we finance by the past all our project with fixed rate. We are already covered, so it's not a real problem for us. And the last point of view is the investors. That's true that both inflation and financing cost increase are making investors more cautious. But Infra, and specifically in France, seems to be really attractive. Because I will explain the French model later, but on two parts of the country we have like a monopoly, and it's a really good market for the phone in France. So they're looking for a high quality project. So French, I think it's good for that.
Okay. So good resilience
Yeah.
overall in a
Absolutely.
unpredictable year. Mario, situation in Italy, same question. What is your view on the...
Italy, when you say Italy, you say always something that is complex. So I try to simplify. In terms of building construction, the construction costs for sure are higher. This is something that is the same that we have all around Europe, but we have an additional burden that is related to the Italian recovery resilience plan. That means that Europe is, as you know, we have the largest plan in Europe, is around over 200 billion that should be spent by 2026. That means that all the major Italian and international companies have a lot of things to do in the very short term. So last year, for sure, there was a major issue for us was the workforce, to have the people to deploy the network. For sure, this kind of pressure is still there, and it will be even worse because we are competing all the major companies to get the people for the civil works. Yeah. So this is a structural issue that we are facing. On the other side, let me say, on take-up, I can refer to what I was saying before. We are saying that the telco are in financial difficulties, so they don't have the appetite to grow, even if they have a payback time, let me say, is around a couple of years, because they have operational cost to swap from the FTTC to the FTTH. And this is something that very odd, because you have in front of you customers that have no appetite to grow. That's why one of the reasons I think that we should have some clear idea at European level about what to do on the to hit the digitalization target of 2030, because it's not enough to build all the infrastructure you may have if we are not going to utilize the infrastructure that is over there.
Okay. Then I'm going to combine two questions for you.
Oh, goody.
Not one.
You're smart enough to handle that, I'm sure. No, first question, any comment on the overall context, but maybe transitioning also to the next theme we wanted to touch upon, which is the policy regulation context, and you know, the economic context, but also in the UK, how do you see your company evolving and also the competitive landscape evolving in terms of policy regulation?
Okay, excellent. And I think actually they do fit together in certain ways. I mean, I think the three main market pressures we see in the UK is inflation, both of our costs and the overall environment, and then obviously interest rates, which impact us all to a certain extent. And I think what we'll see over time is the market shifting and evolving faster than people expected with respect to mergers, acquisitions, people maybe not being able to make their plans. I mean, we've seen interest rates go up quite a bit, and we expect that there's quite a few of the altnets who are able to raise quite a lot of particularly debt funding without having revenue, really struggling with their covenants. And what we see in some of those companies is actually the amount of debt that they're taking slowing down. And from that perspective, it's most likely there will be activity. And I think it'll start this year. There's already rumors out there, but I think that it's a bit faster than expected. Having said that, the inflationary environment means that, as I talked about earlier, there's 4 major broadband providers, ISPs, and effectively they had all built into their contracts the ability to raise prices mid-contract by CPI plus, in some cases, up to 4%, which meant that over the last 2 years, consumers have seen their prices rise without still being in contract, 10% last year, 10% this year. So that's quite a bit of shall we say, angst in the marketplace, but something that we have the ability to take advantage of. So I think from our perspective, and putting the customer first, we don't have mid-contract price rises. Obviously, we do want to increase our ARPU over time, but we do that by adding value. So, on the consumer front, actually, this market benefits us quite a bit because we can differentiate ourselves and really focus on how we add value to the customers. And I think what we will see in the marketplace is that change of evolution of the corporate structures. Leading into the policy and regulation, I think it's a challenging time for Ofcom. I think when in 2016, when the current market, I would say, policies came out, it was all about infrastructure competition. And the good news is it worked, right? So at that time, Openreach, quite frankly, wasn't really going at pace, and so it was very anxious to get money into the market and to push it. And I think that happened successfully based upon there being over 200 companies currently rolling out fiber across the UK. I think there's two kind of regulatory things that are going on that I think Ofcom needs to consider whether or not it, shall we say, allows Openreach, because they are getting the acceleration they have, to effectively re-monopolize, or do they continue to focus on infrastructure competition? So recently and currently it's been moved out, but an Equinox 2 offer by Openreach, which represents what their wholesale pricing is, and bringing that below where some of their copper pricing is. So it's quite controversial. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because from a political perspective, you've got your main incumbent rolling out brilliantly at pace. I mean, I think we can all commend Openreach for what it's doing, but it puts it at risk for future infrastructure competition if you force everyone else to close down. So I think it's a very interesting time, both in terms of being in the industry and how it's going to impact investors and debtors, but also the regulatory debates to come, and how Ofcom and the government choose to do so. I personally, of course, hope they continue to support infrastructure competition. I think it's good for the country. I think it's good for consumers. And effectively, what happens if it goes away is there'll be stopped being innovation. And I think just the fact that so many of us, when we see what's happened over the last 10 years, know that innovation and competition is absolutely what's needed.
Thank you. And Andreas, I guess you can echo maybe with some variation about the situation in Germany with the German level, and maybe also the influence of the EU regulation higher up. How do you see that context in Germany?
Yeah, there are certain similarities also to the UK, but there also there's some distinctive factors. Regulation is always required if you don't have a well-functioning market as such, and I think the key thing is that you need to look on the market-specific parts, right? And especially in Germany, we have the situation that, as I mentioned earlier, that we probably make the largest share of the unserved FTTH deployment still to be done in the whole Europe. Still, we have this gigabit infrastructure egg where I'm pretty concerned about, because in essence, it provides you with symmetrical obligations for all players, despite the fact that we are not operating on the same level playing field, right? And it's a bit the tricky part in terms of what we've been seeing. I think the EU has somehow realized that this is an issue, but somehow failed so far to really turn around the topic, because it eventually will favor SMPs and incumbents in the rollout part in particular. And that's something which we are particularly concerned. On the other hand, what we've been seeing with the gigabit connectivity recommendations, which unfortunately is just a recommendation and is not going to be a directive or kind of regulation, I mean, it puts the right focus on the SMP in terms of how to interpret the rules for the SMPs, in particular related to copper switch off, migration of copper to fiber on a non-discriminatory basis. Currently, we have discussions in Germany with the incumbent, who basically don't want to trial anything with third-party networks, but they basically want to do things in pilots based on the existing network, and the situation that they have locked in all retail service providers, oligopoles similar to the UK, somehow makes it tough for all the other infracos, 200 and more in Germany, without open access to really get some traction. So I think striking the right balance, providing the right policy framework is an important thing in order to really achieve, because otherwise we will actually see a slowdown of deployment, and we might also see private sector capital disappearing out of the market, and that's not helping.
Well, thank you. And I guess the way you position your company in the market depends also on the business model. We've talked about vertical integration. There is the wholesale model, which relies on ISP. There are incumbent and new entrants. So everyone coming from different perspective. So I just want to hear your view on how you see the market evolving. Maybe starting with the situation of France, where the structure of the market has led to very specific profile of market players. David.
Yes, thank you. Yes, in France, it's a little bit different, because really earlier the French government fixed a plan in 2010, and the plan was to cover all the country to 2025. And to be well organized, the government decided to define 3 different areas in France. The very dense area, it represents 7 million home passed, no more than 100 cities, for example, Paris, Toulouse, Marseille, etc. And in this area, you can do overbuilding. And in reality, we have 4 optical fiber for each home in this area. The second zone, the medium dense area, represents 16 million home passed. They don't like coal on the private investment to deploy those areas, and only 2 operators respond in 2011. So Orange deploy, I think, 75 to 80% of this zone, and SFR the rest. But they are in a good situation because you cannot do overbuilding. It's a pure wholesale model. So for Orange, it's also an integrated model. But for the beginning, at the French plan, it's a wholesale model. And the third part of the country is the very less dense area, which represent 18 million home passed. And in this area, all the local authorities done public tenders during few years. That's finished now. All the public tenders are done now. And in this area, it is public contracts. We call it PIN, Public Initiative Network, through concession. And Altitude deployed 5 million home pass in this area through different concession. So it's also a monopoly. It's why we began really early. It was easier in France to deploy optical fiber due to the asset of Orange and Enedis in France, using pole and dots. When we build a new town, we reuse more than 80% of exist poles or dots. It's why it's quite different. And to finish on this point, we have a specific regulation in France which fix the price. And when an operator arrives on a new network, he can pay 500 euros for a right of use of 20 years for each customer. So they depend a lot of capex at the beginning. So when you depends a lot, it's difficult to pay both on the side for the copper, on the other side for the optical fiber. It's why optical fiber goes well in France.
And so it's a very specific market, very much structured. I think the situation is a bit different in Spain. Can you tell us a little bit the situation on wholesale model, fully integrated, possible merger and consolidation now that the market gets to a certain level of maturity? What is your view on that point, Enrique?
So it's depend on which is the penetration of the home passed and which is the coverage of the population that you have. Which when you are in around the 84% of the coverage with your own capabilities, so it is true that when you think how will be the business model that you need to apply, trying to reach this full coverage. So the only way to do it is first of all we create a fiber co. It is just dedicated trying to make feasible that we are getting all the population covered, and this need to be crystal clear. So getting some agreement with any other actors, players that can be helping us trying to make the business model. Because if you are you try to apply the business model just only because you are making the capex, and you see which is the cost of the home passed when you are going to a rural area, it's just impossible to reach it. This is because we have been creating this kind of levers, working in a wholesale approach for sure, getting all the agreement with any other player that they are still active, that they have an asset there, and this is what we are trying to do. So it is how we can combine wholesale with some agreements, trying to guarantee the full coverage of all the situation. You can apply something similar if you go to some Brazilian, so in Brazil that we have Sao Paulo, out of Sao Paulo, how you can combine both of them, but the formula finally it is, you cannot, it's just impossible to get all the capex that you need to go to the velocity. You need to find some kind of levers. This is because we have Telefonica Infra, who is leading, and it is making some coherent approach on how we are using all the fiber costs with a wholesale model, getting all the agreement with the different players in the different regions, trying to make that this happen in a coherent way. And this is because we have Telefónica Infra, which is helping us trying to make some coherent and trying to build a business case that it is helping us trying to make our job, not stretch our capex.
Okay. And maybe on the other side of the coin and the room, Andreas, would you see something similar possible in Germany? Why are you vertically integrated? Why is Deutsche Glasfaser not opting for wholesale model? What's the situation in that perspective of the...
Good question. We do both, because the point, as I said, on the retail side, we have an oligopoly, basically, which means in order to get some initial penetration on your network, is you need to be vertically integrated and operate with your own brand. And we usually operate based on a demand aggregation model with a go-to-market, and we achieve north of 35% in terms of, let's say, activated customers to be activated with our own brand. So about 35 to 40% is our own brand. But we also managed to get the first wholesale agreement on nationwide scale with Vodafone, which we are currently been implementing in our systems, which is the second biggest broadband player in the market. And that hopefully will open up for more open access wholesale deals, because as I said, on the Infra side, we have more than 200 players. Right? Those ones will not be surviving eventually if they're not offering services on an open access space. And from an Infra perspective, you want to have a very active retail market, which also means you need to make hurdles lower for new entrants in the market, which is Bitstream as a very important product in order to keep entry hurdles for the retail partners as low as possible into the market. That's what we've been advocating, and that's what we've been doing. But eventually we will see consolidation also on the Infra side due to things like inflationary cost pressure, interest rates going up. And we've already saw a couple of players in Germany who came very late to the party and basically they already decided to leave because the case just didn't stack up anymore. And don't underestimate economies of scale, scope, and experience in the fiber rollout, which will take some time before you can have a really running, efficient machine.
Thank you. I would like to switch the discussion to a topic which is more focused on the customer experience. And looking at then, you are virtually integrated from that perspective. You explained that very clearly, and you also explained that, you know, you hold on one hand the financial side of your approach, but on the other hand, a heavy focus on customer satisfaction. And at the FTTH Council, we've been migrating from promoting the rollout to insisting also on how do you reach adoption, how do you make sure that fiber is really used in its full capacity. And from that perspective, you mentioned Wi-Fi, customer satisfaction. What is your view on how do you make sure that your customers are fully happy with the experience and that you can, you know, upgrade your offering and hopefully maintain a level of development of your services moving forward?
Yeah, so we see ourselves as experts in broadband, including the in-home, you know, Wi-Fi, etc. But what we see is the key to how we differentiate ourselves is we aren't just adding on products and bundles. And it's really interesting because when we first started our journey, we would always get two questions from potential, both investors and debtors. One, how are you going to survive not being wholesaler? And two, how are you going to survive without a bundle? Because everyone wants a bundle. And it's really interesting to look back on that now, because what we see in the UK as the networks that have the greatest penetration actually are not wholesale networks. If you look at Virgin, for example, in its original incarnation, and you look at us, we have the highest penetration overall. Across the networks that we have, not necessarily across the country. And then when you look at bundling, it's with over-the-top coming, people actually don't require to have their TV in one place. Now, Sky is still a very strong player. Virgin is a strong player in the UK, but we see a lot more that people are willing to take those as unbundled or not. So when we talk about customer experience, it's not as much about the specific services, because we think and what we see is that consumers just want connectivity that works. What we see it about is respecting the customer. Great customer journeys, really smart customer service, that when they do call, they're treated with respect. It's very responsive. We make sure if there's any issues, they're sorted straight away. And I think what's tricky is if you don't do that right, actually doing connectivity, especially to single-family homes, is much trickier than offering a service on a copper network that's already there. And so there is actually quite a bit of an education about how do you go from just being able to turn on broadband almost instantaneously, which we are effectively able to do in our fiber to the building deployments, to actually having to potentially dig to get to someone's house and civils, and it taking, you need traffic, et cetera, et cetera. These are complicated user journeys. So really being thoughtful about that, I see as important, and something that we haven't seen turned into expert mode yet in the UK. And so I think when you talk about customer experience, it can't only be about the products and services, it has to be about, is this easy, does it work, and do I have to spend a lot of time on the phone trying to get answers to my questions? And the answer has to be, no, we take care of it. So I think it's a mentality as well as a technical answer to how do you make sure that customers get what they want.
And Mario, still around that question of customer satisfaction, which is very much connected also to our capacity to drive fiber adoption. You mentioned copper switch off, which looking at the level of penetration is UK might seem a bit premature from some perspective, but you think this is very important. Could you maybe further develop what is the importance of copper switch off and to do it right now in Italy for you?
In general terms, we know that sometime in the future, copper FTTC will not be longer a technology that will support the application. We don't know when. We have some estimation that will be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. We don't know exactly when. But when you look at the number like the one we have in Italy, where still we have putting together copper with FTTC, around 14 million landlines still on the old technology. If you want to migrate this number of lines to the new technologies, you need years. So you should start now to be ready in an horizon on 7, 8 years, because you can migrate a couple million lines a year. This is the capacity, because every time you have to call the customer, you have to enter his place, you have to find him in this place, because sometimes nobody is at home, and after you have to find if there are any specific problem issue that you may have once you're going to go to change from the old technology to the new technology. So I think that when you have this kind of target, I repeat, I think that the European target of 2030, the gigabit society, is it's very solid, it's very important for us to be achieved. If we don't have in mind that we need something else, we don't need only to have the infrastructure, but also we need to plan today how we can get there. The real risk is that you will have the infrastructure, you will still have at least 2-3 layer networks, you will not be efficient in terms of energies, and so this continent, each single country wouldn't be so green as it should be. So that's my concept. Why we need to start, we need to move from now? Because this is something that is a medium-term project, medium-long. In some countries it's different because Spain is so close to the copper switch off, but in other countries it will take time. And time is something that you cannot buy. You have to invest today in order to be ready in the future.
Thank you. I must say to the audience that I'm still having a list of 65 points that we pre-agreed to discuss today. We promote fiber to the home, but as a conference organizer, I also need to look after food to the delegates. So we'll have to conclude a bit earlier, but I would like maybe each of the panelists to give just 30 seconds conclusion. What makes you wake up in the morning with positive thoughts? What are your key challenges? Maybe just one word of conclusion before we can free the audience, which is a bit starving now.
So, if I may, so you mentioned customer experience. So, We have all the technology in our hands, trying to build an extraordinary good network in terms of connectivity. So we did it in the past. Doesn't matter if it's copper or whatever. And we were just defining and creating the network operations center. And our mindset it is, if I control the network, I control the quality that the customer it is perceiving. Later, we discovered that it is not true. Network can be working perfectly, and the customer can have a very poor experience. And we create the service operations center. How we can be analyzing service by service, how the customer is perceiving my service. This is not a matter of network. It is a matter of services. Finally, it is a matter of customers. So when you are getting all the technology for the FTTH, GPON, 10 GPON, Wi-Fi capabilities, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, so how you are making that this network and all the services, they are working. And this is what we have been defining as the autonomous network journey. How we can build a network who it is analyzing customer by customer, and we have the technology, trying to be at each moment, so offering to the customer the services that they are asking for. So it is a re-evolution. It is transforming not only the network itself, the copper to fiber, or 5G to 6G, whatever. It is how we are creating the management of the network itself and all the system, the IT, BSS, and OSS, and how we can really create a new paradigm of working. This is a new project who it is even defining which are the KPIs. For sure, if the Wi-Fi doesn't work, you have an issue. You need to solve it, no doubt. And this is something that we are creating, and this is a significant part of the transformation. So when you perceive that you control the technology, it is not true. So this is the moment trying to focusing again in the customer and building an experience with all the ecosystem of pieces that we have. This is when we are. This is a long journey. It is at 25 and later on 2030. But this is when we wake up. So the first thing it is, how can I improve and how we can go a step further in this journey, who it is an autonomous network journey, so touching all the pieces and managing an amazing data capabilities. This is when we are. So in parallel with serving our customer day by day and with the help of all the contractors that we are and all the technology vendors. This is our dream. This is what we are trying to do. And it is funny.
I'm sure. Thank you. David, what is your dream?
Oh, my dream.
Switch of question there.
Yeah.
Customer.
No, but it's probably easy. Quality, quality, and quality. Due to the customer experience, our major problem in the future is the quality. And in France, we have a specification due to the final connection. We use Orange, Free, Bouygues, and SFR as subcontractors to do the final connection. So imagine 100 times an hour someone touch your network. So it makes me crazy. So we have to be very focused on this point to keep quality on our network and to have a good price of the maintenance in the future to continue to have a final good price. But I'm quite confident because in France we have a strong regulation, and if our costs are higher, probably we will have higher prices to our customers. And also, like in Spain, we see the end of the copper. We began a lot of proof of concept in different towns in France. So it's really important day by day to think the end of the copper. And to finish, in France, our incumbent and also SFR are really strong on the B2B market. There is no space for strong retailers on the B2B market. So we try to develop a strong offer based on a bitstream offer on optical fiber for the other operators than Orange and SFR. So it's an important point for us. And I want to add like commercialism. We don't want to go out of France as an investors, like in France, but for all my colleagues, we are ready to go out of France as an industrial, because when we finish our construction in France and we have a lot of people which are able to put their knowledge outside of France to help everybody.
Good. And so, Mario, are you dreaming on copper-free Italy when you wake up in the morning?
I dream of that. I dream green.
Green, yeah.
Why I dream green? because by definition, each company that is here is sustainable, is green. But just to mention something that is very important to us, in our project, we have rural areas where we have the largest project, I think, in Europe. To give you an idea, it's a project of 88,000 kilometers. And what we are doing here is to try to reutilize the existing infrastructure. We are utilizing 73% of something that is already there. This is a great number because we are talking about a huge amount of kilometers, but this is a social project for us because digital divide is different if you are downtown in Madrid, in Paris, or in Milano. There is no digital divide. But if you go in one of the Italy's made of around 8,000 municipalities, our entire project will be covering 6,200. We have already done 4,300. Means that you are bringing them life back, because at the end it's something where you bring water where there is the desert. On this project, we are investing hugely. At personal level, my team here, we are working very hard because it's very difficult in terms of permits, authorization. This is something that we haven't mentioned, but this is something very difficult to manage. And also when you build, you don't build, 50 kilometers of infrastructure. You build 500 meters, 700 meters, because these are small municipalities. So it's a very fragmented project, very difficult. But to give an idea, today in the last year, we have built over 20,000 kilometers. That has been a big, big effort. Today, I think that we can say that we are at 63,000 kilometers out of 88. That means that we are very close. Let me say, we need some more months, 2024, to finish this project that is the largest in Europe on the rural areas.
Thank you. Dana, short conclusion?
Yes, I would say, conclusion to everyone in the audience, I would say such great lessons to be learned from all these different business models. I think the customer experience is what has really come through, even though we all handle it differently. So make sure in your businesses we keep thinking about the customer, because without the customers, we're not going to have revenue, and we're not going to be able to sustainably build. So think about the customer. And the other thing is let's make sure we learn from each other, because I think the brilliant aspect of a European Fibre conference is very few of us are actually competitors, but have all faced very similar challenges and have come up with some brilliant solutions. So I'm going to enjoy going out into the conference and learning, but it's not only about the technology, it's about the brain power that's brought us to where we are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Last word for you.
Well, the dream is probably that we have 100% fiber coverage by 2030 for full of Europe, right? In order to really unleash the potential of social and economic development in all states in Europe. And ideally have the freedom of choice with the customer, whether it's a B2B or a B2C customer, in terms of where to buy the services and where to consume the services. That would be my dream.
Thank you. A big round of applause for our panelists, please.